Joe, you know what conversation that we're not having this year going into this offseason about Texas is, are they back? Because last year they got to a playoff, and I think it kind of proved to a lot of people that Texas not only have they been recruiting well, that Sark can take them to the playoffs and potentially go into the SEC and win after they went into Alabama last year and upset Nick Saban and the Crimson Tide. We continue on these deep dives. Joe, what are your thoughts on the University of Texas now that they are in the SEC?
I think this is going to be a huge year for Texas. I think that bringing back Quinn Ewers and him not declaring for the draft is going to be huge for them. This Texas offensive line is not far off from the Georgia one. It's not on par, but it's not far off. We talk very highly of Kelvin Banks. We talk very highly of what we think that they can produce. But I have to say, I feel like Texas does feel a tiny bit overhyped. I'm not, before anyone gets pissed at me, I'm not saying that they're going to fall off of a goddamn cliff, okay? But there are two major deficiencies that I have noticed, and I'm sure that you're going to agree with me. They lost Byron Murphy and Devondre Sweat. They tried to replace through the portal, but from what I've read, some of the podcasts I've listened to, it sounds like they're uncertain of what the direction is at their interior defensive line. Yep. At receiver, they're replacing Xavier Worthy and A.D. Mitchell, which was one of the best receiving combos in the country last year. I know that you brought in Isaiah Bond, but that is a question mark. I don't know if outside of Bond, who's the next guy that we're going to. I see a lot of freshmen listed here on this depth chart that I'm looking at on our lads. All I'm saying is that there is a possibility that they start meshing and they hit the ground running, and the best players on this roster that we know how good they are take control. But there's just a lot of uncertainty for me to sit here and commit and say they're going to be playing against Georgia in the SEC championship game. I can't say that with confidence at all.
Oh boy, that's going to be a hot take. I can already see the comments on Twitter or on YouTube now.
I don't care.
I do think it's interesting and a question mark because, look, I think that actions in recruiting, Joe, always speak louder than words ever could. You bring up an interesting point in the interior of their defensive line. Not only just are you replacing two top premier defensive tackles, you're replacing the defensive line coach. You had to go into the portal, okay, and
that's the most important part.
Well, Bo Davis is no longer there, and I know Texas fans feel some type of way about Bo Davis, but if you felt comfortable along the interior defensive line, if you're Steve Sarkisian, you wouldn't have attacked the portal the way that you did. Now, Joe, I think that that's a question mark, okay, because I do think that there are a lot of players that do come into the portal. I do think that they got some good interior defensive tackles in the portal. Yeah, I just don't think that the media's been able to see it, so therefore they're like, oh, we're not going to be that well. We'll wait and see. Joe, that's not the issue that I worry about with them. I've told you and hinted at this for so long now, and now we're here talking about them. Look, is Quinn Ewers going to stay healthy? Okay, and
I thought you were going to bring up the secondary. Sorry, continue.
Well, I'm going to hold on. Okay. Just wait just 1 second.
Great.
Okay, Quinn Ewers, can he stay healthy? And Joe, in a conference that is going to get after your ass. Now, I see a lot of Texas fans, especially coming through SEC media days. Joe, it's SEC championship or bust for them. And I'm thinking to myself, look, man, I think that you are a really good team. I do think that you have a lot of talent. But I also question if Quinn Ewers for a third straight year, Joe, does go down or gets banged up. I know that you have Arch Manning. But, Joe, you can't have games like Houston. You can't have games like Kansas. Because I'm telling you, if you do it in this conference, somebody that you have no idea who it's going to be is going to jump up and beat you. That's what happens to teams like LSU. That's what happens to teams like Texas A&M. Oh, well, we have more talent than you. We should beat you. Oh, well, no. Okay, you don't, but you still beat us. How? I question what they're going to do offensively because I don't know how good their running game is going to be. I do agree that their O-line is going to be pretty damn good. I don't know what you have at receiver. I think Isaiah Bond down the stretch was, and I know you hate me saying this, one of the better wide receivers in the country, considering, look, he goes up against Georgia. He has 4 catches in the SEC championship game all down the stretch to solidify their win against Georgia. It's not like he was going against bad DBs there, okay? He does get a better quarterback in Quinn Ewers and a better play caller in Steve Sarkisian. I think they're ultimately talented. Joe, I just don't know if I could put any faith that they can come in here and get to an SEC championship game. Now, are they talented enough to get there?
Yes.
Yeah, they are. So there comes a part where, Joe, I do have a lot of question marks about Texas. Would it shock me if they're facing Georgia again in an SEC championship game? I'm going to be honest. No, it wouldn't.
No.
But again, am I supposed to believe that Quinn Ewers is going to play all 13 or all 12 regular season games?
Well, so this is what, to piggyback off part of what you said before I get to Quinn Ewers, they have the guts of a team that is capable of going to an SEC championship game. They absolutely do. A returning quarterback, a spark plug running back at CJ Baxter, I think is going to be really good. Trey Moore is a player who was one of the most productive edge rushers in the country at UTSA, and I think is going to step right in and maybe not mimic that production, but be really important for their sack getting as a unit. Where, again, there's just not a lot of certainty because of some of those position groups. I don't think it's a question mark, though, at quarterback. Steve Sarkisian made a really good point, and I agree with Steve Sarkisian where he is saying that it's massive for them that they have this quarterback situation. It's not a controversy, as I jokingly tried to make it at one point during the offseason because we had nothing to talk about. But he has a situation where if Quinn Ewers, who is injury prone, he 1000% is, Arch Manning is the epitome of steady. That was why he was recruited. He was recruited not to be He was recruited not to be the big arm, bomb me over the top like Quinn Ewers. I'm going to kill you 70 yards downfield. That was not what he was recruited to be. He was recruited to be elevate the floor of the offense, dink and dunk, accuracy, more of a Carson Beck type. And I think in his second season, if he had to step in for a game for Quinn Ewers, I would feel very confident about that. If he doesn't perform, that would be a huge disappointment.
You lost me now.
Why? Why? He's going to be a redshirt freshman?
Joe, just because his name is Arch Manning shouldn't stop a true starter or a true quarterback that has seen no action that you have. Hold on, please, dear Lord, that you have no idea what he's going to do. I will remind you that both of his uncles came into the SEC and struggled out of the gate. That's not a Manning trait not to come into the SEC and struggle. Both of them did. So again, God forbid Quinn Ewers goes down before Georgia. God forbid he goes down against a defense like Kentucky. Then what? Well, first of all, just because his uncles had trouble doesn't mean that he will. His uncles had success doesn't mean that he's going to have success. Yeah,
but this is why we can't use both of those points to talk about his last name and how it's going to impact his success.
I'm never going to trust a first-time starter ever.
Okay, wait. Seriously, serious question here. How much experience did Garrett Nussmeier have before he stepped in that SEC championship game against Georgia? How much experience did he have? 7 games. Overall, 7. Did he ever start a game?
No, but he came in multiple times. He never officially started games. Ed did this stupid thing where he'd run Max out there for the first drive and then give the entire second half or give an entire game to Garrett Nussmeier.
Okay. So he was able to play at a ridiculously high level in the SEC championship game. Like everyone was blown away by how he played in the second half.
Fair.
I don't need Arch to do that. I need Arch to come in if Quinn Ewers goes down against, I don't know, some Texas A&M. Say he goes down and he's got an injury, he can't finish the game. I would feel not 1,000% confident that he's going to win the football game, but I'm not going to feel uneasy. He's no longer a true freshman. He's been there for plenty of time, and he was projected to be this great potential starter. We're not talking about a 3-star.
You're falling into the trap.
I'm not.
Into the trap.
Have you not said on this show that you thought that give him a little time and he wasn't ready as a freshman and now he will be ready eventually?
Yes, but just because me saying that doesn't mean 6, 7, 8 games that he started. Joe, I'm telling you right now.
I'm not asking him to win the Heisman. I'm just asking him to not suck.
No, but you said, but what are we trying to? Could they be 9-3 with Arch Manning? 1,000%.
Yes.
What did we just come off of saying? That they believe that they can be back to where they were a year ago, being a conference champion and a playoff contender, correct?
But he doesn't need to start 12 games. He might have to.
Okay.
He might not even see the field.
And he might have to, which is what we talked about with Quinn Ewers going back-to-back years of being injured. You cannot have TCU, Houston, and Kansas type of games in this conference. Good luck if you think that you can do that and win.
I think you're doing the inverse. I think that you're accusing me of playing into the Manning name, but you're holding it against him. You're holding it against him that there's all this hype.
No, I am not.
I'm not buying into the superstar hype.
If
I don't think that's
other
him.
Quarterback, okay, goes down in the country. If Carson Beck went down today, or let me not use Carson Beck.
No, that's a great example. If Dylan
Beck.
Gabriel goes down, I'd feel great about Dante Moore stepping in.
Okay.
If Will Howard goes down, I'd feel really good.
You're not going to feel
about
1,000% confident that they are what you thought going into the beginning of the season.
Just because I feel really good does not mean that I think said player is going to step in and blow. No, I'm not conceding. I am not conceding. All I am trying to point out is I think you're misunderstanding what I'm saying. Just because I feel really good about a backup quarterback doesn't mean I expect this player to be otherworldly. All I need them to do. Malik Murphy won them a football game against one of the better teams in the Big 12. And it was Kansas State, and he stunk. Malik Murphy stunk in that game.
God's honest truth. With what you know about Kentucky today, I'm throwing them out at random, or Kansas State. You throw a true freshman, or a true starter, first-time starter against some of these defenses in this league. All right. Oh, by the way, you brought up Garrett Nussmeier. You want to nitpick that one? Let's go ahead and nitpick it. Had 3 massive turnovers where LSU got within 14 points. If he doesn't have a turnover, they're getting back into the game and they're down 7. So there are moments. Yes, you are correct. Garrett Nussmeier went nuclear, but everybody wants to forget about the first-time real starter mistakes that he made.
I don't need him to be perfect, though. That's what I'm trying to paint here. You don't need him to. You just need him to be a competent starter. You just need him to be.
Let me tell you something that's not competent to move this on.
Okay.
Can I tell you something that's not competent?
Yeah.
Or was not competent a year ago? Their secondary.
I don't understand why you're so down on their secondary. It was a younger group.
Okay, continue.
And they brought in Andrew Makuba from Clemson, who is a very stellar safety. They're going to be better this year.
Okay. Those same guys and that same philosophy that was having busted coverages. Okay. By the way, not all those busted coverages were young guys either.
Did you know that? I didn't even know this. Malik Muhammad is only a sophomore.
Correct.
And he was one of the starting outside corner.
And Derek Williams. Correct. All I am saying is, Joe, you can't have a secondary that was 113th in the country and tell me that you don't have to take a massive step forward. Don't you dare come in here and tell me a team that had literally, Joe, think about this. LSU gave up 1 yard more through the air last year than Texas did.
Okay, but I just think.
You hear what I just said?
Yes, I did.
Okay.
I did.
1 more yard. So do you remember how ass that secondary was a year ago?
Yeah, it was terrible.
Do you remember what Jackson Dart did to that secondary a year ago?
Yeah, I do.
Imagine that same exact secondary, Jackson Darnold doing that to Texas.
This statement applies to LSU too. When you have the caliber of recruits on your roster, I'll look full circle. We were talking about that at the beginning of the show. When you have those caliber of the recruits on your roster,
LSU didn't have that caliber of guys on the roster.
Can improve. Didn't LSU have some young guys that weren't ready to get on the field?
Yeah, but young, undeveloped, under-recruited dudes.
But so the point is that when you've got some young players, there is plenty of potential for
fair. I think Derek Williams and Mohammed could really be good. It doesn't stop what Washington, as an example, did to them on the boundary over and over and over and over and over again. I'm old enough to remember when we broke down Texas and Washington, all the Texas fans told me, what did every comment from a Texas fan read that week? Blake's an idiot. Our secondary's good. Blake's an idiot. Our secondary's good. Okay, you do have talent, but my point still stands.
It's a different season.
Okay. And Joe, what do we talk? We go based off of what happened last year. If you had a unit that was one of the worst in the country, you cannot tell me that you go into another season saying, well, you know what? We can't just say, hey, they had talented guys. Oh, so it's going to be better. You can't do that. You got to show me that they're going to be better. And that is
why can't I do that? If you have the guys that were too young and inexperienced and made a bunch of mistakes last year and weren't ready for the circumstance and the situation, and not to mention the fact they went and added a veteran at free safety in Makuba. Makuba's a great player. He was one of the highly sought after players in the portal.
Let me give you an example by your logic. Do you also know who had a passing game to the equivalent of Texas's passing defense? Iowa.
Iowa does not recruit the kids at receiver that are comparable to the corners that are on this Texas team. That's not a good example.
When you have a unit that is in the 115 to 120 mark, and Joe, you are a Power 5 program, that's not always a talent issue. That might be a philosophical issue, a schematical issue by a DC. It doesn't matter how talented Derek Williams is. You know who went up in there and smacked that ass all for 4 quarters? Kalen DeBoer was scheming dudes wide ass open. So again, I would just say you got to show me when that secondary has been that bad the last 2 seasons, Joe. They have not had a secondary under Sarkisian that's been above the 90 mark ever. So it's going to continue to be a big issue. Joe, you want to know why they had a lot of success last year too? That secondary was anemic. That secondary was broken. Yes, they had a lot of young players. It didn't stop the fact that they had one of the best front sevens in the country. And now you have to replace that front seven.
Not the whole front seven.
Not the whole front seven, but two big interior pieces. So, Joe, imagine not getting the pass rush that you have with the secondary that you had a year ago that's got to be better.
I can't agree with this. I can't find a middle ground here on the expectation that their defense isn't, their secondary isn't going to be better.
Again, let me make it clear. I am not saying that they can't improve, but you can't tell me with teams like LSU that's in the conference, teams like Alabama offensively that are in the conference. Oh, they have units that are really bad. But it only matters, okay, when we want it to matter. We question LSU secondary when we talk about them every year. We are going to question what Alabama can do at wide receiver, right? Like, when you have units that are really bad a year before and you have question marks, yes, Joe, they have to answer question marks in the secondary for me. That's all I'm saying.
Sure, but I also used this same exact argument when we did the Alabama preview. I made the same exact argument that there are guys that were recruited, that were high-level recruits, that didn't get a lot of touches, didn't get a lot of opportunities. But there's plenty of room for growth. This is a whole offseason. They've been hitting the weight room. They've been practicing during spring ball. There is plenty of potential for them to improve. Could they fall flat on their face again? Sure, they totally could. But we're not talking about a group that had
so what do you think
of juniors. Wait. We're not talking about a group that had a bunch of juniors that all came back and they didn't bring anybody into the room. We're talking about a group of guys where there's 2 sophomores stepping up, and they brought in a senior transfer from Clemson that was one of the best safeties in the transfer portal. There's room for improvement.
So what do you think they're going?
What do you mean? What do I think?
What's their record?
I think they're going to be 10-2. I think they're going to drop a stupid game. But 10-2 kind of requires a lot of, everything goes perfectly because they have an easier schedule compared to some other teams. But that would assume that they don't pull a You mentioned the Houston game. They didn't play well against Rice. Like, they need to be on their P's and Q's. They also play Michigan. Like, they can't be playing sloppy.
I mean, you're at the big house. I'm actually going to give them a win there, but it's still a big game. Joe, you lost to Oklahoma a year before, and by the way, you got Oklahoma, Georgia back to back. So I know down the stretch it gets easier after the Georgia game. Vandy, Florida, Arkansas, Kentucky, Texas A&M. Like, I get all that. Joe, I could see 3 losses on this on this schedule.
If it is a disastrous no, I don't want to say that. If things don't go according to plan, and the questions that we're bringing up here, if receiver isn't as good as it could be, if defensive tackle in the interior is not up to par of what they need, and sure, I'll throw in your question of if the secondary doesn't improve, that to me is a 9-3 season.
I do think they beat Oklahoma. I think they lose to Georgia, but I look at Kentucky and A&M at the end there. That's going to be
at A&M is going to be tough.
At A&M is going to be tough, but Kentucky's going to be a very physical football game.
They're going to beat Kentucky.
I don't know if they. I'm not saying they won't.
Okay.
All right. Those are 3. By the way, you think they go to Michigan and win?
Yeah, I think that. I think that at the end of the day, that them having Ewers and the uncertainty of Orgy is going to hurt Michigan in that game.
The uncertainty if they're going to have an orgy.
End the show.
All right.
BetOnline remains your top spot for all of your live betting action and contests. NFL, college football, UFC, NHL are all in full swing. BetOnline is your #1 source for wagering news, odds, trends, and predictions with both desktop and mobile access at any time. Head to BetOnline today and use promo code BELIEVE, that's BLEAV, for 50% off your first deposit. That is a 50% welcome bonus. BetOnline, where the game starts.